As Guyana sits on the economic and political crossroads, we speak to the nation's opinion leaders and decision makers to get their views on the challenges the country faces and the path it must take to achieve national development. Welcome to Nation Watch. Now here is your host Mervyn Williams, former member of the Guyana Parliament.
Welcome to Nation Watch. We extend warm greetings to the East Indian community in Guyana. Today marks the Indian Arrival Day, and we salute all descendants of East Indian immigrants to Guyana, and we salute them for the contributions that they have made, are making, and will continue to make to the development of our country. Happy Indian Arrival Day 2024. Nation Watch today will look at the relationship between the capital city and the central government. But before we do, let us take a moment to recognize that the People's Progressive Party is in the middle of their Congress, which is several years overdue, but we do not hear any criticisms in the public domain about the number of years overdue, although we hear a lot of criticisms about the People's National Congress reforms, Congress which is by no means overdue. The People's Progressive Party talks about one Guyana and boasts about what it has done. And they're doing their celebratory dances at that place that the Parliament of Guyana is usually convened, the Georgetown Convention Center. Let's take a brief look at the PPP's understanding of one Guyana, a mind-boggling situation. We're going to bring to you some footage of what the PPP has been doing and continues to do to the people of this country. Let's take a look at some of the accomplishments of the People's Progressive Party.
Folks, we're back. They're here now they've broken the houses coming down the line, and they're here to break the remaining houses. But there are people in this house. There are persons in this house. Yeah. So there are persons trying to move out their stuff from the house, the fridge.
Open your window, let us see how you. Are you broke the fucking bridge and the people?
We apologize for the language. Of the state-sponsored demolition at Mocha, and now we're looking at the foot of the hill leading to the Linden-Soesdijk Highway.
We need our home. Our home was being wiped out, and we was being promised to get
you will see the composition of the ethnic representation here, and you will understand what is really taking place. Babies in arms, mothers, young people.
Our home was being broke down and we was being promised to get justice in 3 days time and no justice yet.
Some of the accomplishments of the People's Progressive Party in government from 2020 to 2024. And we're going to show you some photographs of what happened at the seawall not so long ago, where vendors were displaced with no alternative offered to them. And the mayor and councillors of the city of Georgetown engaged those persons with a view to finding solutions to their situation. So there was this massive demolition exercise, which a minister who is also a minister of religion promised would not have occurred. Soon after his promise was made, it was broken. And having accomplished this and significantly more, the People's Progressive Party yesterday celebrated their accomplishments in this manner. Without rhythm, of course, but they celebrated nonetheless. Someone said that the king of pop was being imitated by the king of poop. I do not endorse that observation, but I felt compelled to repeat it. Ladies and gentlemen, the resources, the revenues garnered from our oil and gas sector, tremendous wealth is there available. But that's where it's being enjoyed, at the upper echelons of the People's Progressive Party, where the president can present himself on a stage with his ministers putting on his attire, and they're having a jolly good time, while Guyana, the real Guyana, has more than 50% of its population living in poverty. More than 50% of our population lives in poverty, but that's where our money is going. That's how the People's Progressive Party celebrate the cruelty, the treatment they mete out to the people of this country. And then, of course, they brought the indigenous peoples from as far as Brazil and hinterland Guyana as well. And the mayor will join us soon, but there is a report, or there are reports of an outbreak of dengue in the capital city. And our indigenous citizens were brought to the city and put in I'm advised, in the exhibition center at Sophia, which has inadequate bathroom facilities for that population that is now housed there. folks complained that they had to walk with their own hammocks, and those who didn't have hammocks were put on makeshift military-style mini cots in a mosquito-infested environment. But such is the regard that the People's Progressive Party has and shows to our indigenous people across this country. So that's more like a night shelter for the homeless. That's what it looks like. And then there's the other picture with the male contingent housed in the same general area. But this is the contempt that the People's Progressive Party shows for the citizens of this country. So I just thought I'd share that with you on this very, very auspicious day in our country's history. And I take this opportunity to welcome His Worship, Mr. Alfred Mentor, Mayor of the City of Georgetown, to Nation Watch. Mr. Mayor, welcome.
Thank you, Merv, and thank you for having me on your show, Nation Watch. In your words shortly that you spoke, in your words that you spoke about the contempt that the government has shown to many persons, including the indigenous people or the first people of this country. It's really one of those things that I'm lost for words to even describe the actual situation. I didn't believe in an oil bonanza country like ours, they would use people or treat people in such a fashion, and to bring them from far regions to Georgetown to sleep on a cot or sleep in a hammock or sleep in such a fashion. I believe that we have the kind of resources to be able to treat those persons. And I also even observe, even when you're in government, you have the kind of executive power to deal with certain matters. And I would have seen, even in Guyana, where we're trying to reduce styrofoam boxes and all of that, you would want people to enjoy some of the, sweet of the party as well. You bring those persons out from party groups all around the country to eat in a styrofoam box. I thought that was a little bit absurd, and I thought that was an observation I had when I first saw persons even, enjoying a meal in a box. It was a bit short for me, and I thought that it's a big oversight by the government themselves to have persons enjoy at a Congress that is the highest decision-making body of that party, to come to the city to eat in a box and as well sleep on cots.
Well, the highest decision-making forum in the PPP is one man, not a Congress. Things have changed. Well, Mr. Mayor, talk to us about life in the municipality of Georgetown. What is the relationship? It appears to the onlooker that the relationship between the mayor and councillors of the city of Georgetown and the administrative arm headed by the town clerk, that relationship appears to be strange, if not strained. Talk to us about that relationship and if that has any bearing on the Central Ministry of Local Government and its influence.
To answer your question, Mr. Williams, on this matter, yes, the relationship is not the most perfect one. It has never been very perfect, even under your Bradger's tenure as mayor. I've always been a kind of a go-between in trying to bring solutions to the table, in general. But as it stands now, it's still strained. It is still one that I have to find solutions to work with the administration, to treat with different persons from the town clerk to the engineers and all the other officers of the council. And I have been working outside of the box, inside the box, working with councillors, trying to find solutions. But at the end of the day, that relation in relation to the minister or the ministerial or the local government itself, making decisions from 4th Street that impact the City Hall at Avenue Republic. Those kind of decisions and those kind of interference where government persons inveigle themselves in the decision making of the council continue to happen to this day. And we believe that something must be done, something ought to be done, and some kind of measure should be put in place at the level of the legislators to be able to treat with these issues. As an autonomous or semi-autonomous body, we need to have more autonomy in treating with matters, and that local government officers, while they work or they're servants to the council or creatures of the council itself, should not be have to be able to bend over sideways and backwards, please, central government. They should be able to operate on the mandate of the various councils and to be able to treat with their jobs and to be independent of these national government players.
But there seemed to be a shift because the last central government at the level of the executive, they dealt with issues differently. But let's not go there just now. Let's look at the kind of interference, for want of a better word, that the central government at the level of the Ministry of Local Government get involved in a positive sense. In 2018, the government of Guyana, under President Granger, started a process that would have resulted in the reconstruction of the Stabroek Wharf. The records indicate that since 2016, negotiations had started with respect to securing funding. Some 53.2 million pounds sterling, equivalent to 16 billion Guyana dollars, was already committed in the pipeline for the reconstruction of this wharf at Stabroek. It was the projection of the government then that that project would have gone out to tender mid to late 2018 and funding provided so that it could go out to tender and the construction could start by early 2019. This was under Minister Patterson's area, and at the time, Patricia Chase Green was the mayor of the city of Georgetown. So the PPP has institutional memory regarding what was planned for Stabroek Wharf, because Patricia Chase Green is now a member of the People's Progressive Party. Obviously, she can share that information with them with great ease. Then came the no confidence vote in 2018, it was, and there were no budgetary allocations possible to start this project in 2019. Why would the People's Progressive Party abandon such a fantastic project when the funds were available and all arrangements in an advanced stage? That's the question in the mind of many Guyanese. But when Minister Robeson Ben visited the scene in the company of the Minister of Local Government, Ms. Parag, I think her name is, there was a pronouncement that this is the responsibility of the Mayor and City Council of Georgetown. Comment, if you would, Mr. Mayor, on this whole business of neglect for blame. There's also Freddie Kisoon, who recently said on a program that the PNC is neglecting the city, making it dirty so that the central government could get blamed. But we'll come to that a little later on. Comment specifically for me, please, on this business of abandoning this mega project and now blaming the city for the collapse, the recent collapse of the Stabroek Wharf.
Well, to answer the particular question that you've asked in relation to the collapse itself and the blame game, I would have been out there myself, one of the first responders to the rear of the wharf collapsing. The reality of it is that that particular wharf was cordoned off, that particular wharf was condemned, that particular wharf, we would have treated with it in a certain way under the same Chase Green-led council, where we would have put systems in place to treat with that. However, the government of the day at the time would have been working with international investors and other agencies to be able to bring forward a particular project as it relates to the dealing of the Stabroek Wharf as well as the boardwalk setup. But again, the PPP in their own way have come having that institutional memory, but eventually condemning that particular project or not even considering it as part of their plans to be able to treat with these
But
issues.
now they're blaming you.
But now they're blaming me for I remember the minister herself, Ms. Parag, was saying that this wharf fall under the management and control of the council and that it's my responsibility. Yes, it falls under the council and the administration of the council. This is not something that you need to point finger at Alfred Mentor or the general council. I want to even go a little further to speak to this property. This property, while it's a property of the mayor and city council and falls under some remit of the National Trust. There are certain things that you have to do in order for you to touch or to break and to treat with this. And these are things that were all considered under the Ministry of Public Infrastructure then to be able to honor and manage these issues. But for the government to come to lay blame squarely on the mayor and the council, I thought it was a bit ingenious. I thought that if they really meant or understand their pong of salt, they would have come with a plan. The minister herself, the first time she would have visited the market area, it was 2 weeks before. The minister herself, who was named as Minister of Local Government in January of this year, the first time she visited that area was 2 weeks before the collapse of this particular place. Had she been more involved, had she even made a pitch to the council, I don't know which other council she would have met with, but I know for sure she hasn't met with the municipality of Georgetown from an official capacity as Minister of Local Government to be able to speak to policies and plans and programs of the government.
Has the city council made an approach requesting a meeting with the minister of any sort?
I think, yes, through the town clerk, we've made a request at some point in one of our meetings, but I myself officially has not written to her speaking to having a meeting of the mayor and city council and the councils of the city of Georgetown. But at the end of the day, I believe that like any minister, the previous minister that would have ran that ministry, after the first week of being in office, he would have made arrangement to meet with the biggest council, which is the mayor city council of Georgetown. And he reached out to us after the first week in office to have that meeting. So I would assume that would have been an initiative of the minister rather than we trying to reach out to her to have dialogue and have discussion as to how you need to treat with the city, how we need to look at it from a fiscal standpoint, how you need to look at it from a fiscal, I think there's a Fiscal Transfers Act that speaks to a number of things.
Which we will come to.
Dealing with the council. So I believe that naturally that should have been at least an initiative that would have come from the minister herself to show interest in the biggest city in Guyana, for a meeting of the minds.
Comment briefly on the suggestion that the mayor and city council has been deliberately neglecting the sanitation of Georgetown so that there could be a negative impression created on the minds of Guyanese and foreigners alike, and blaming the central government?
We, like I could say to you, we have been working night and day to be able to treat with the Lama issue. We spend some part of our major budget, I think over $500 million to almost $1 billion in garbage disposal and cleaning the city and having those contracts with the various disposal services. We do not micromanage that process. We have officers that are part of the city structure that treat with those issues, that have sweeper cleaners, that we have a number of other persons doing a whole host of things. I visited cities within the last few months, different cities around the world. And while there are pockets of areas that we have challenges, it's not as bad as I've seen some other places. And these are big cities as well. So I'm not saying that I'm taking blame off of the council, but for sure, we've been spending monies, we've been spending resources, we've been treating with a number of issues to remedy these different things. And no mayor or no council in their right sense will do that to create an outbreak of any disease or so on and so forth.
Two points here. It is obvious to anyone looking on that that section of the city's operation seem more inclined to comply with central government dictates than it is complying with decisions made in a democratic process at the level of council. How does that impact the work of the municipality?
I agree with you in that particular sense, and I would have observed this even when they had local government elections, where a number of the persons who are working within these different departments or a particular department, and even some of the contractors themselves, would have avoided picking up garbage and cleaning the city in order for the councillors or the directors of the city to look bad. And I remember that happening in and around election time, or the local government election time, and I thought that it was one of those things that we had to correct. So what we've been doing recently as well is that we've been looking at our contract in the review process. We've been looking at it in a sense to increase penalties or to cause those persons who violate or choose to play politics, we'll be able to cause their contracts to end. So those are things that we are looking at to have implemented within those contracts to ensure that people don't play politics and that the city in which they serve, either as a contractor or as a citizen or whatever, they are responsible for what they do. So we've been looking at these issues, and we've been looking at measures to be able to curb those kind of issues so that persons don't do things that will hurt the city and cause us to cause the city to be shed in a bad light as a council.
Well, the Georgetown Mayor City Council stands accused by the People's Progressive Party of being, what should I say, of not discharging its principal duties as a council. When on the one hand, you have a town clerk who goes contrary to the decisions of council. You have the head of a solid waste management division who appears not to believe himself answerable to council and responsible for implementing the decisions of council. And on the other hand, you have a central government which is indebted to the council for rates and taxes. Talk to us about the impact of the non-cooperation from the administrative side of the municipality, and the impact of the failure, refusal, or neglect of the central government to pay its rates and taxes, and tell us what that amounts to at the moment.
In relation to the question as it stands to the indebtedness of the government to us, I did indicate in some article a few weeks ago that we're talking with around $6 billion.
And this is without interest?
This is with interest.
With interest.
With us being considerate and to giving some waivers or looking at some kind of a quid pro quo arrangement, it could amount to about $4 billion or just thereabout. Those are things that we're saying that as long as we have those monies and we continuously have our monies and we continuously have the government honoring their obligation of their rates and taxes, we'll be able to provide more services to the people of the city of Georgetown. But government starving us and frustrating us and not dealing with these matters, it even equates to what they've been talking about. If I heard about this boycott thing being spoken about nationally and internationally, but the government themselves is boycotting the council by starving the council of its resources, by budgeting for it at the national level to be able to pay the city and using the money as a variance in some other area to spend it. They have it budgeted for some ministries. Some ministries pay, most of the ministries do not pay. And these are things that is a real humbug to the city and humbug for us to be able to do our job.
And then there is the question of subvention, if I may rudely interject.
Yeah.
The Fiscal Transfers Act has some prescriptions with respect to subventions for local democratic organs.
Right.
Have you been benefiting from that? Has the council been benefiting from that? What is preventing the council from benefiting from that? And how would receipt of such subvention contribute to a better service from the council?
Let me explain. If we have our rates and taxes, if we have our subvention, or I would want to say our monies under the Fiscal Transfers Act of 2013, which I believe was signed into law originally by the said Bar Jagdeo when he was president. So he's the one who wanted for the city to be treated differently from other towns and NDCs and everybody else because of the size of it, because of the geographic location, and because of its rates and taxes in general. So there were a number of things that were put in place to allow for that kind of situation to happen. What has happened is that the government keep on changing the goalposts. When you have this in place, then they come up with something else. In this particular case, I've heard the Honorable Vice President himself spoke about under the fiscal transfer, you got to have your financials up to date. So one of the things he did ask in the campaign period is that our financials, or all our financial statements have to be up to date. I came and I met a number of things. I came and I would have seen us having different audits. Every year we've been having audits, but it was specific for a certain thing. We've just moved to have at least the last 8 years under the act, and under I think there's a rule as it relates to how far back you could go. But we are doing the last 8 years to allow for us to be compliant, to allow for us to be in place, and that audit has been commissioned. It's been done by one of the major auditing firms in Guyana. The accounts to be sent to the Auditor General. So when we have those in place, I think that's one of the things the Vice President would have suggested. Until we get these things in place, those where we can get it. So
But I thought that would come from the Minister of Finance.
fine, but I agree. But what I'm saying to you is that the Vice President is the chief spokesperson for the PPP, and he is the one who will guide those particular principles. And what he has done in this particular instance is stated that we got to have this. So this is what we are working on currently, to have ourselves in compliance. And when we have ourselves in compliance, we'll be asking under the Fiscal Transfers Act for funds that is required to the council.
When another roadblock is likely to be put up, as
Yeah.
as in the case of Ipadiji. I want to move on quickly because time is running away from us. Let's talk about vending in Georgetown. There have been a number of approaches to the High Court by businesses requiring and in some instances obtaining orders directing the mayor and councillors of the city of Georgetown to remove vendors from certain geographic spaces. The council has an approach which I understand to be engaging the businesses, engaging the vendors with a view to establishing concrete measures for the alternatives that the vendors can benefit from. There seemed to have been a departure from the council's position by the town clerk based on information in the general public domain. There seemed to have been some diversion here. You have given one side of the story which says that by a certain date, you would have undertaken certain steps in a process. Mm-hmm. You have said publicly that the town clerk had, in fact, agreed to doing a particular function at the bazaar, mm-hmm. but turned out that measures were taken by the town clerk and team to actually remove vendors before the mayor and city councillors had an opportunity to engage them on the question of alternatives. Talk us quickly through that process as it relates to Munishwar's location, the Idaho Banks DH location, and I believe it is also the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation and its environs. Talk to us quickly about what's happening there, what's the relationship factor doing to the mission of the mayor and city council?
What I could say to you as it relates to that particular issue, because I did make it a public issue on the fact that one thing was said to me and councillors, and then something else happened in relation to the cleaning up of the Demico area, as well as the area on Regent Street where there was mandamases granted. These mandamases were granted, but they were also an arrangement between the different parties as to how long and the time frame they give you to be able to treat with it. Like we did with the Munishwars, I would have intervened, and because it was around Christmas time that they wanted to treat with this issue, I think they would have gotten that order in November, and I reached out to the Munishwars to be able to get some more time to allow for at least January 15th for those persons to be removed around their area. Mandamases, as you all know, are orders compelling the town clerk to be able to deal with matters and to treat with the issue and to remove persons from pavements or roadways that are blocking entrances or exit to people's properties. So it's a matter that the town clerk is instructed by law based on the orders to be able to deal with certain matters. And there's not much leg room unless we be able to get some time from those persons or be able to work situations out. So that is what we've been doing. Many of those persons sometimes write us, and we've been working in consultation, having discussions, working with the vendors, seeking alternative arrangements, and so on and so forth. So we've been treating with matters of the council and dealing with those vendors in a way that we could be able to find real solutions. We're working on short-term solutions. We're working on mid-term solutions. And I would like to explain that to the general public. That the short-term ones are we're working with spaces that we're looking at to see how we could treat with issues. We are also seeking ways as to how, just like when we had the parking meter itself, that was to be rolled out. But the rollout, as it relates to using your road, had to be a situation where people come in, people move out, and you have them there from a certain time to a certain time. So that kind of situation is something that we could use those laws or those bylaws to be able to allow people to use, but not to remain there permanently. So those are things that we are working on a short-term basis. On a mid to long term, we've had some plans where we're looking at the Stabroek market. We're looking at the Vendors Arcade Mall, which is opposite the banks, GBTI and Republic Bank. And we're working on a plan for the border market, where the border market green, where we want to develop those places. Again, those are long-term projects. Those are projects that we're doing feasibility study to increase the stalls there, increase the stalls at the Vendors Arcade Mall, and increase, if we treat with the border green. So if we get all those areas working in tandem and closely knitted, we'll be able to redirect people back to the markets. We'll be able to redirect persons back to those places that will form those long-term solutions. But that is not a project that we could do without central government involvement or the bigger funding agencies to be able to treat with those issues. But we will need that kind of support. And because we feel that vending is not only a local issue, but is a national one.
Yeah, I hear you on on the alternative proposals. I hear you on the validity of those proposals. What I'm not hearing you on, I don't know if you're avoiding it or if you missed the question. How is the relationship factor between the mayor and city council and the town clerk affecting your ability as a council to deliver to the people in a coordinated way the kind of service that people expect to get? Why is this rift open up like that? If you can work together, if the town clerk can recognize that our principals are the mayor and city councillors of Georgetown and not the local government commission, how would that improve the quality of service that you offer to the community?
I wasn't avoiding the question, probably it slipped me. But the reality is that, like I did indicate, that the town clerk is a creature of the council. She's a servant, as well as all the other officers that work with us. And their job is to be able to cooperate and to effect the decisions of the council.
But we're not seeing that.
What has been happening is that they, just like you mentioned, they've been avoiding it and listening to the whoever the powers that be, either from people in 4th Street or whoever else, to create the kind of mayhem. While we're moving in this direction, trying to have consultation, have dialogue, trying to find workable solutions to these issues, you many times get a situation where you're blindsided, or you're moving to treat with this, then you hear something else happening. Like I was told that recently the public hospital would have written to us, and they said they would probably challenge or move to court on this issue about vending in that particular area. I passed myself and I've seen that location, that there's need for some reorganization of that area. There's a need for us to be able to find additional suitable places which could work along the East Street area. But lo and behold, you were hearing they'll give us 7 days based on a letter by the attorney at law. But the town clerk wants to go and act on that letter. You can't act on it. It's not an order. It's not a mandamus that come from the court. It's a letter advising us what they plan to do. I have since written to the lawyer, because the letter was CC to me. I've also written to the public hospital people, the CEO or the administrator, whoever that is, to be able to speak about how we could be able to treat with this issue in a way that makes sense, in a way that is consultative, in a way that should happen. Like I had to go on the seawall the other day to speak about this issue, of how they got up today and want to move the people tomorrow, and to ask people to be disrupted or displaced based on that particular area. So those are things that we try to work on. Those are things we try to deal with, and those are things we try to work with. But you find ever so often the town clerk has been listening to other persons outside of the council and moving in the direction that is contrary or is in a collision course with what the council wants.
But the streets of Georgetown, don't they fall under the purview of the mayor and city councillors of Georgetown?
There are certain streets and there are certain roads. There are public roads and there are city streets.
No, I'm talking about the streets.
The streets of Georgetown, yes. Most or all of them fall under us, and there are certain aspects that fall under the central government.
So in the case of the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation exercise some time ago, I don't mean by the hospital, but I just mean the geographic area, where central government brought in trucks and operators to remove people. I mean, what kind of relief is available to the mayor and city council when there's this brazen intervention by central government over areas and issues which the city council has jurisdiction over, and where is the relief, and or what is a measure of relief available to the city council when the town clerk goes,
I hear you in relation
down
to
the
that,
wrong road.
but even before I came here, Mr. Williams, I was reading an article, and my interpretation, or I gather, or what I decipher from that article itself, it was in the times of somewhere, not the Ghana times, but times of maybe India or Europe or someplace. But it was speaking to this trickle-down effect. It was speaking about vendors. It was speaking about persons that are not benefiting from this oil bonanza. And one of the things I would have gathered or deciphered from it, where I've seen this energy or this push by central government to displace all of these vendors, and even though they're using their businesses and their funds in those high offices or those people who own majority of Guyana, so to speak, to be able to use that as a weapon to be able to deal with this. So they're weaponizing this whole vending issue, maybe to cause the kind of chaos and confrontation. But what I observed from the article, or what I gathered, is that what it said, it spoke about Guyana benefiting from the GDP in 2022 was about 63%. In the last 12 months, this GDP spoke about us having a 40% GDP. So it's speaking about how we're a high income or a high economy country that is moving apace, but the regular persons are not benefiting. But the reality of this is that if you're having all of these vendors all around the place, and you're talking about this kind of money and this kind of situation, then the two does not collide with each other. The two does not connect with each other. The two does not correlate with each other. So they're trying their best because the fact remains that the PPP was in government for 23 years before the last 4.5 or whatever of the afternoon, and now they're here another 4 years. The PPP is on the stage. They're on the stage. They don't need to complain about who this and what. They did not provide for those small persons. They did not provide for a socio-economic arrangement.
It's not in their interest. Those people support the AP and
Right.
UFC.
They did not provide for those kind of situations. So what they are creating, in a sense, is trying to displace those people because they're ashamed of what they have done over the years to not provide for them. Now I'm bringing a real solution, or we could redirect those persons to Stabroek, redirect them to the Vendors Arcade Mall, but we have to develop those places and develop border markets so that we could have more places and more investment in those markets so that we create an investment for those people. And that is what is very important to to the city and to the central government as a whole.
Mr. Mayor, vending in Guyana is not only an economic issue. It is largely an economic issue. People rely on what they do as vendors to support their families, pay their mortgages, pay their car loans, send their children to school, send them to university. That's how important vending is on the economic side. Vending in Guyana, like several other countries across the world, is a cultural thing. It is an experience that people from across the world visit countries to get. Organized vending, structured vending, properly resourced sanitation activities post-vending are all important to making sure that vending is the kind of activity that is rewarding economically, refreshing culturally, and being a national attraction to persons from across the world. Why does the government not recognize the need for cooperation with the mayor and city council? Is it because they're just naturally bad-minded, or because they see a way of punishing people so that they can attain absolute power eventually? And what does the MNCC see as its solution? Have you perhaps gotten recommendations to get it to place before the Constitutional Review Committee, some kind of law reform to make sure that the city has management control over its officers? Do you see these as being necessary at all?
Well, the reality of this is, and I think government has to take that into consideration as well as the city. The key is managing expectations. Managing expectations is not the easiest thing to do from a city standpoint as well as the government standpoint. But if you have the kind of resources that the government has based on the oil resources that you have available, it could be realized. And it could be realized in a shorter term rather than over a longer term. And this is something that we all have to treat with and have to work with to be able to come up with those things. But to answer that, the other part of the question you asked just now is the last part of the question you said?
Yeah, talking about what is required to make vending a rewarding experience, and how do you see government's relationship with the council? The government obviously feels that they want to control.
Yeah.
You know, somebody once said that a man would burn his country down so he can manage and preside over the ashes.
Yeah, I saw that quote somewhere recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. The angle that they've taken, it is clear. They try their best to win the council. It seems that it will never happen. So you have to find ways so that we could work. You have to find ways in which we could try and do things to develop the city. You can't just choose to spend on your own and to treat whoever. You ought to understand from the city fathers and mothers what is the need, what is the most important felt need, what is required. And that kind of hand and glove arrangement ought to have been in place a long time ago. I said it to you just now. The Minister of Local Government has now been in office for 5 months. She never reached out to the city.
And law reform as a possibility?
As relating to law reform, I have spoken to our legislators on our side. I have reached out to many other persons on the other side, as well as the law reform people that are part of that. What we're going to be working on is to be recommending new positions, systems that allow for these offices to be insulated from central government, and that we could work and make decisions that are binding on our council so that those officers could actually carry them out. It's not a case where it has to go through some central government mill before it's eventually done, because those are the kind of things that when we make positive decisions or decisions to raise the profile of our citizens and to improve their lives, government themselves intervene and try to stop those kind of things. There's a number of challenges we have to take to the court on a number of interpretations that we'll seek to have, but those are things that we'll be addressing sooner rather than later.
In the 1.5 remaining minutes, the city council clearly is not on top of its public relations operations. The general population is unaware of the challenges faced by the city council in its attempts to satisfy its mandate and to provide quality service to the people. What are you doing about that?
Well, in our recent budget here, in the previous budgets before, there was some bit of removal of certain aspects from a PR perspective, where even the administration did not adhere to. We have just moved in this particular budget to address that particular issue, to have a proper PR component, to have a PR consultant part of the process to guide our PR department. We've even moved to have certain researchers and some other people in place. And we've also spoke in that budget itself how we can monetize a number of other of our assets to be able to get more monies out of it, as well as the long-term plan as it relates to fitting with issues as it relates to the 45% or 45% of portions that owe us, either from government side, either from business side, or either from the resident side that owe us rates and taxes. And we intend to at least work through the laws, because the law provides for it under distraint warrant or petty debt. We're not going to move to the part execution aspect of it. There are ways we could work, where we work on settlements and payment plans and so on. So we're looking at those methods so we could be able to address those issues and to get those persons paying and doing their civic duty to the city of Georgetown.
Thank you, Your Worship. Alfred Mentor, Mayor of the City of Georgetown. A few messages from Nation Watch. Government of Guyana, pay your rates and taxes to the City Council, please. Government of Guyana, Minister of Local Government, Minister within the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, let the City Council have its subvention, please. Businesses, property owners across the city, please cooperate with your City Council, pay your rates and taxes if you're not, and demand the quality of service that you're entitled to as long as you're paying those rates and taxes. To the town clerk, please stop playing politics and serve the people of the City of Georgetown. Work collaboratively with the City Council. Encourage your team to do the same. Vendors, elections are fast approaching. You know who the principal players are in making you uncomfortable, in denying you the right to work, the right to earn, the right to provide for your families. Make sure you remove them from government when election day comes. Because for Guyana to grow, the PPP must go. That's all we have time for today. Until we meet again next Sunday, God bless.